Chair recognizes the member from Rochester, Representative Groen, to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, if you saw the movie Amazing Grace, it was a movie that chronicled the life of William Wilberforce. He was a member of Parliament in Great Britain, and he made it his life goal. It took him 20 years to ban slavery in the British Empire. And he employed many devices along the line: pamphleteering, speeches, community forums, things like that. One of the things that he used was one of his fellow House members rented a party boat, and they invited members of Parliament and their wives to go on a cruise. And there was music, and there was fine dining and entertainment and good fellowship. And he asked the music to stop, and he directed the captain of the ship to pull up alongside a ship that was docked there. And William Wilberforce was on the deck of that ship, and when they pulled alongside, he started to speak about the inhumane conditions that existed on slave ships. And the women, the wives of the Parliament members, began covering their noses with their handkerchiefs because of the stench. And he said, "Take your handkerchiefs away." He said, "Breathe in the stench of what this means. Breathe in the stench of what it's like when one man can own another and dispose of them as he sees fit." Why would I bring slavery into this discussion? Because this is about ownership. If you're the father of a child and you refuse to take part in the care and maintenance of that child, what are you called? You're called the deadbeat dad. And it's probably a decent term. Now, if you're the mother of that child and you decide that you're not interested in the maintenance and care of that child and you decide to dispose of that child, what are you called? Well, you're called pro-choice, and you're exercising your constitutional rights. If the father decides he's not interested, the full weight of the legal system is brought to bear on him to say, "You will provide." If the woman decides not to provide, the full weight of the legal system is brought to bear to make sure she gets to make that choice and dispose of that child. It's not about responsibility. It's about ownership. That woman owns that child, and she can dispose of it as she sees fit. Now, there are some conditions. She can't kill it when it's in kindergarten. She has to do it before anybody's seen the face. She has to do it before it has a name, before it has an address, before it has relationships. Then it's legal and proper. Now, if you watched the movie 12 Years a Slave, the story about Solomon Northup, how he was captured, a free man, captured and drug into the South and spent 12 years as a slave. His name was gone. His face was gone from his community. He had no more address that people could find. He went from a free man to a nobody. Now, just imagine if slaves had no names. Imagine if we couldn't record their face. Imagine if they had no address. Imagine if there was no Underground Railroad. I submit to you that slavery may still be legal today. But thanks to the Underground Railroad, those things changed. Imagine today if we had a modern Underground Railroad and we could spirit the victims of abortion away from their owners and their killers. And I could say, look in the gallery and see the children that we've rescued with this modern Underground Railroad. Just with the sum of the abortion clinics in New Hampshire alone, we could fill that gallery hundreds of times. If it was nationwide, we could fill it hundreds of times a day. Imagine an underground railroad that could do that for us. We would be haunted like John Newton was. John Newton, the author of Amazing Grace, was a slave ship captain and later became a pastor and wrote the hymn Amazing Grace, which we still sing today. He said he was haunted by 20,000 ghosts, the ghosts of those people that he conveyed from Africa to England, America, the Indies. He lamented, we treated them like animals. They had names, beautiful African names. But he said, we were apes, they were human. "150 years after we as a nation banned slavery, we still suffer with the legacy. The legacy of slavery comes up again and again. How many decades, how many centuries into the future will we look back on today? And we will look back on the 57 million ghosts that haunt us here. Over 57 million babies have died in abortion in the United States, and many thousands in New Hampshire. We got rid of them because they were simply inconvenient. How long, how many decades will we look back on the depravity of our time? Year after year in the E&A committee, we discuss the need for a state meat inspector. And every time we do, the answer comes back, there's no money. There's no money to fund the position. We need that to help the farmers of the state. But they say, no money, no money. But we do have money to increase funding for those organizations that slaughter babies. We give them our precious taxpayer dollars. Like John Newton said, we turn a blind eye. And worse than that, we not only turn a blind eye, we give them precious taxpayer dollars. Every Thursday at 24 Pennacook Street in Manchester, about 25 preborn children die. So I have a solution. If you're a social liberal and a fiscal liberal, or if you're a social liberal and a fiscal conservative, I think I have a solution for the state budget. Because if we believe in this quality of life ethic that allows abortion for what could be said is the most innocent among us, I think we can apply that to the state budget. Now that we've dispatched the sanctity of life ethic and replaced it with a quality of life ethic, I think it's time to apply it to the budget. If there are truly lives that are not worth living, if there are lives that are simply too inconvenient for us to allow them to continue, if there are lives that we just simply can't be bothered with, well, let's apply it to everybody, not just little babies. So that 24 Pennacook Street's only busy on Thursdays. So on Monday, we could take those who are substance abusers and who've had second and third chances, and we could sweep up 25 of them off the street, drop them off at 25 Pennacook Street, and they're off the budget. And if we did that every week, pretty soon we wouldn't need the Governor's Commission on Alcohol and Other Drugs. On Tuesday, you remember when we used to count the prison population in hundreds and now we count it in thousands? On Tuesday, we could take this quality of life ethic and we could apply it to the prisons. And so every Tuesday, we take 25 of the worst guys out of the prison and we drop them off at 25 Pennacook Street, 24 Pennacook. On Wednesday, we could do parole violators. After all, they've been in prison and they're out, and they've shown that they still can't handle the responsibility. They're certainly inconveniencing the state. On Thursday, they're busy. That perennial bugaboo. On Friday, we could solve that perennial bugaboo of the state budget, the wait list. 25 a week, and we could take care of the wait list. We could run for re-election saying, we have finally eliminated the wait list. Are you repulsed by the ugliness of my suggestions? Are you horrified by the brutishness of this suggestion? I am. I'm simply taking the skeleton that has been built by the quality of life ethic and putting flesh on it. Should we support this? Because as ugly as my suggestions are, abortion is even uglier. And we subsidize it with our taxpayer dollars. I say shame on us. God help us, Mr. Speaker. God help the state of New Hampshire.
Chair